The Sidmouth Folk Festival has a long and usually glorious history, and here to help me understand it, I'm joined by Derek Schofield, historian of the festival. Derek, thanks very much for joining us. How did it all start, all the way back in 1955?
Yes, 1955. Well, it was originally organised by the English Folk Dance and Song Society, who had been doing sort of summer vacation courses for many years, and there was a great boom in folk dancing and square dancing in the early 1950s, and they'd been running a festival at Stratford-upon-Avon, but then they wanted somewhere else to organise it, and one of the people that worked for them said, well, I've just recently moved into Sidmouth and it's a lovely location, so they decided to have a week-long festival here. And at first there were just 100 folk dancers came, dancing for themselves but also dancing for the holiday makers, and that's how it started. It was very, very small scale to start off with.
And what was the British folk scene like back then? Because, it's the beginning, 1955, beginning of rock and roll. There were all sorts of other sort of sub-genres and subcultures, especially of youth music.
Yes.
The recording industry was being taken over, really. So what was folk like back in 55?
Well, there wasn't very much folk song at that stage. The folk song revival was in its very early days, and in fact there was almost no song in the first few years of the festival. It was all folk dance, but gradually folk song came in. Folk singers liked the place, liked Sidmouth as much as the folk dancers, and it grew and grew. Particularly came into the 60s, and they really started having more folk events, but still very small scale. I mean, the two principal venues for the folk song side was the drill hall, which we can probably see in the background, only a very, very small hall,
over there.
And what they call the beach store, which was not, as some people said, where they kept the beach during the winter, where they kept the deck chairs during the winter. So that was a very, very small location. But of course it got bigger and bigger, and then the person that was involved as director then, Bill Rutter, was very much an internationalist, and he started inviting overseas dance groups to come, and eventually they moved into a big open air natural amphitheatre just on the in the town, and then it really started to take off. And the folk song side started to take off, and they started to put up marquees like the one in the background here, that you can hear the music from. And so it just developed year by year, and it was always the place, Sidmouth was the festival, the premier festival really, of the traditional, more on the traditional folk side, folk song, folk dance, Morris dancers, sword dancers, and these international dance groups.
And then by the 1970s, folk really was big. It was a massive sort of cultural change. What was Sidmouth's role in that?
Yeah, well, it was a lot of initiatives actually came from Sidmouth. The first workshops for women's Morris dancing took place in Sidmouth, and a lot of interest in the 70s in English instrumental music and instrumental dance music, and a lot of initiatives took place here for that. And of course the festival, is not just concerts, it's a lot of workshops, so that people were coming here learning Morris dancing, sword dancing, instrumental music, and then taking it back to their homes and spreading it in that way, and a children's festival as well. That was very early on, children, and then it expanded into youth programmes as well.
I mentioned the 1970s. A lot of the performers that we'll be seeing this week, we're on the first day of the festival now, they first started coming here from the 1970s. There are people here whose careers were made back then.
Indeed, yes.
Are there people here who are aware of the fact that they're only in employment because of Sidmouth?
Yes, it's certainly a boost to people. People who get booked at Sidmouth, whoa, I've been booked at Sidmouth. That's a feather in the cap, really, over the years. And the festival changes. It changes every year and develops, and for artistic reasons as well as for every other reason. And a lot of artists have their careers have been boosted from it here. But as I say, it's that grassroots, ability to learn new skills and new music and so on. That is a really very important part of Sidmouth.
Some people involved in the music industry can't play an instrument or sing, but they're really interested in that foul creature money. Occasionally that does raise its head. What happened in 2005?
As I said, the English Folk Dance and Song Society started it. It was getting bigger and bigger and getting a bigger proportion of their overall annual turnover by the 1980s. So it changed then, and a group of people took over the festival, organising it, and they. They grew it again and changed it again. But of course, it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and there's a big financial risk from that. But the people that were running it then decided, this is the time to change. That was in the festival's 50th year. So then there was the decision, what will happen? And it looked as if it was going to stop altogether. So a group of people who've been very enthusiastically involved in it over a number of years got together and put together a festival for the following year, smaller scale. We no longer had the big arena with the overseas teams, getting increasingly difficult to get those. But, it rescued it, rescued it and carried on from 2005, and then it's grown and grown in a different way, but it's still expanded and succeeded, by, when you say money, but money is important, but nobody's in it here to organise this to make any money, I can assure you.
I've mentioned your book published in 2004. A couple of questions here. Where can I get it? And are you writing the follow-up?
Yes, I wrote the book the first week in August for the history of the festival in 2004, 50th year. It's obviously long since out of print, although there are a few copies knocking around. Now it's almost 20 years since then. I'm busy in other directions at the moment, so there's no follow-up just at the moment.
And I reckon, even you've been looking at the long history of this festival, you reckon that folk and Sidmouth are both thriving and living on each other?
They are, yes, but we're in difficult financial times as always, and we just keep working very, very hard to keep the festival going and prospering.
Derek, thank you very much. That's superb. Thanks very much, and good luck with the sequel.
Thank you.